Great. So this week, I want to explore. So the last few weeks we've been talking about and exploring impermanence and what it means to let go and what it means to live in the presence of the truth that all things that have their time and place, so to have their time of passing. And there's Jazz and her cat. And this week we're kind of rounding the corner of, from a place of seated emptiness, how we can begin again. And I think as a collective right now, we are, not just personally, but as a collective, we are all being given an opportunity to begin again. And, we're going to lean into the tradition to really anchor and align in a way that makes sense for all of us. And the very first thing that we'll do today is we'll start in meditation. But one of the most key principles in many of the great contemplative and spiritual traditions is to move the awareness from the space of the head and the thoughts and the sort of, I guess, the space to the space of the heart. And in fact, at the time where a lot of some of these texts that we study were written, this was more the seat of people's center and awareness, which is interesting. So it's like we have some prep work to do because a lot of the texts and the practices and things already presumed that we were more experiencing our seat of awareness to be here in the space of the heart rather than up in the space of the head. And when we go to begin again, it's really important to allow the awareness to build in the space of the heart, to have a big presence in the space of the heart, and allow the wisdom that lives here to fuel the mind and the thoughts and direct in some kind of way, versus allowing all of our shoulds and our doubts and our fears and our wants to be validated and that sort of thing to drive the bus. Does it make sense to you guys? And so that's what we'll start with today when we just move into meditation here. So find a place where you can be upright and at ease. And that can be seated on the cushion or seated up in a chair. Even if you prefer to just stand, as long as you could stand relaxed, that's fine too. And if it's okay for you to close your eyes, but if not, you can simply just soften your gaze and take the gaze downward, perhaps down your nose or down your cheeks. And just put one hand over your heart and perhaps even the other hand over that. But really it's just using the sensation of touch to bring awareness here to the space of the chest. And soften your face. Feel a sense of spaciousness across your brow, across your forehead. Experience a sense of spaciousness between your temples. And allow a sense of spaciousness to inhabit your jaw. So relax your jaw. Release the hinge of the jaw and the root of the tongue. Relax the lips. See if you can experience a sense of spaciousness right at the back of the base of the skull, where the skull contours to meet the structure of the neck. Experience a sense of spaciousness in the belly of the throat. And allow the fullness of your attention to trickle from the space of the head down into the vast spaciousness of your unbound heart. So allow your awareness to land and to spread here in the space of the chest beneath the palms of the hand. Perhaps you can even attune your awareness to experience the beat of your heart within the hollow of your chest. The gentle touch of breath in your chest. Allow yourself to experience the breath in your chest. Before you even have a thought about it, just immerse yourself in the felt sense of breath in chest. And if your attention starts to move up to the space of the head and the thoughts, it's not a problem. Simply begin again. Relax your jaw and allow your awareness to slip from the space of the head down into the space of the heart. It's really that simple to just begin again. What's it like to just simply experience the sensation of breath in the space of the heart, beyond ideas and thoughts? Now at the bottom of each and every exhale, allow a little gap, a little space to open up, a place where the breath stands still. A place here in the emptiness where the breath stands still in the space of the heart. Just a moment for you to steep there, allowing the inhale to rise in the chest. But at the bottom of each and every exhale, just a moment or two to rest in the space of the heart, in the silence and wisdom that lives there. Just acknowledging there in the space beyond the breath, that sense of abiding, that sense of that which is at rest, which is always at rest, beneath the flow of each and every breath here in the spacious nature of your unbound heart. An innate and abiding sense of peace, of wholeness that remains complete even as the breath continues to come and go. You just drop in at the bottom of each and every exhale to that abiding place of quietude and ease. Noticing how this is the perfect place from which the inhale always begins again. The perfect place from which you can always begin again. A wise place that always knows how to begin again. It's from within this space of innate and enduring peace. Here in the spaciousness and wisdom of your heart, that you attune to what matters deep in your heart of hearts, in your soul of souls, from this space that remains forever full and complete. What matters? What is it that you live for today? Notice how the attention may want to jump up into the head that wants to think about the answers and rationalize answers. But again, relax your jaw and allow your awareness to rest in your heart and even in that pure space beyond the exhale, in the refuge of your heart. And just listen well there. Perhaps the knowing, the wisdom doesn't come in words, maybe it comes in a feeling. What is it that you live for today? And perhaps you remain in the mystery of that question throughout the course of your day, beyond an answer, allowing every moment to present itself as sacred, as a sacred pondering, a wondering. And as you rest here in the space of your heart, you can either keep your hands on your chest or rest your hands in your lap. You can either keep your eyes closed and just receive these words from that space, or if you'd like to open your eyes, you certainly can. I just want to share with you one of my favorite poems about beginning again. And this is the inaugural poem written by Maya Angelou. A rock, a river, a tree, hosts to species long since departed, mark the mastodon, the dinosaur who left tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today, the rock cries out to us, clearly, forcefully, come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no more place for hiding down here. You, created only lower than the angels, have crouched too long in the bruising darkness, have lain too long face down in ignorance, your mouths spilling words armed for slaughter. The rock cries out today, you may stand on me, but do not hide your face. Across the wall of the world, a river sings a beautiful song. Come rest here by my side. Each of you, a bordered country, delicate and strangely made proud, yet thrusting perpetually under siege. Your armed struggles for profits have left collars of waste upon my shore, currents of debris upon my breast. Yet today I call upon you to my riverside. If you will study war no more, come, clad in peace, and I will sing the songs the Creator gave to me when I and the tree and the stone were one. Before cynicism was a bloody scar across your brow, and when you yet knew, you still knew nothing. The river sings and sings on. There is a true yearning to respond to the singing river and the wise rock. So say the Asian, the Hispanic, the Jew, the African, the Native American, the Sioux, the Catholic, the Muslim, the French, the Greek, the Irish, the rabbi, the priest, the sheik, the gay, the straight, the preacher, the privileged, the homeless, the teacher. They all hear the speaking of the tree. Today, the first and the last of every tree speaks to humankind. Come to me, here beside the river. Plant yourself beside me, here beside the river. Each of you, descendant of some passed on traveler, has been paid for. you who gave me my first name, you Pawnee, Apache, Seneca, you Cherokee Nation rested with me, then forced on bloody feet left me to the employment of other seekers, desperate for gain, starving for gold. You, the Turk, the Swede, the German, the Scot, you, the Shanti, the Yoruba, the crew, bought, sold, stolen, arriving on a nightmare, praying for a dream. Here, root yourselves beside me. I am the tree planted by the river, which will not be moved. I, the rock, I, the river, I, the tree, I am yours. Your passages have been paid. Lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, and if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palm of your hands. Mold it into the shape of your most private need. Sculpt it into the image of your most public self. Lift up your hearts. Each new hour holds new chances for new beginnings. Do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change. Here on the of this fine day, you may have the courage to look up and out upon me, the rock, the river, the tree, your country, no less to the Midasen than to the mendicant now, no less to you now than the mastodon then. Here on the pulse of this new day, may you have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes, into your brother's face, your country, and simply say, very simply with hope, good morning. So good morning. And now this time is over, right? This poem says it so amazingly, and it speaks to one of the most fundamental, what do I want to say, rights that we have in the face of impermanence, which is the right, if we're breathing, to begin again. And to anchor into something that is wise and strong and bigger than us. The rock, the tree, the river, humanity, and, you know, the universe, the planet as a whole. And to honor our place within that as a strong and necessary place, and also a very small place. But I want to start by saying, you know, it's a really reverent act, this beginning again. In fact, the very first of all of the Yoga Sutras, which the Yoga Sutras is text, and it's a text about, you know, meditation and awakening, and it's got these short little aphorisms in there, almost 200 of them. But the very first one, and I find to be the most important one perhaps, is it goes like this: Atha Yoga Nushasanam. And Atha means now. And this now is a very auspicious now. It's a now that no other set of circumstances could have led us to. It's a now that honors that all that is right here and right now is sacred. It's a now that honors that now is the only moment that we have, and that it too will pass. It's not just like, yeah, now. It's this really potent acknowledgement of the sacredness of this moment on top of the compost of the past. Now. So Atha means now. And then Yoga Anushasanam, now we begin the practice of yoga. So begin now, right here in this moment, we have the capacity to begin again as beginners, open, fresh, new, empty. Now we begin. Now at the bottom of this exhale, we begin again. Now, at the dawning of this new day, we begin again. Now, at this moment where I've forgotten and I remember, I have the opportunity to begin again. Now we begin again. And this practice of yoga, if we think about the practice of yoga and what that is, the practice of yoga being the practice of discovering and aligning with and awakening and embodying and embracing our true nature. That's what yoga is. The connection with our true nature. The connection with our true nature, which is a part of the whole. Atha yoga anushasanam. Now we begin again and again and again to align with our true nature, which is connected to the whole, which was never insufficient, which is actually imperfectly perfect. And so when we begin again, it's vitally important to anchor in our true nature, to anchor in a sense of wholeness. I anymore kind of almost hesitate to use the word abundance because it's taken on this interesting sort of meaning. And so I think about things like wholeness in place of that. I think about things like sufficiency, enoughness, right? Sometimes sufficiency is just kind of like, oh yeah, that's, you know, just like the bare minimum or whatever. But that's where we anchor in the wholeness and the sufficiency of enoughness. And, you know, reclaim the word of abundance, which is not, I mean, it's kind of come to mean that we get all the things that we want. Right? Do you know what I mean by that? Like in some of the, in our sort of like worldview right now, it's like in the way of like The Secret or whatever. And I'm not like knocking that if people are along that trajectory, but to not sell abundance short by having it only mean that we get the things that we want and that life aligns. And I will say, when life does align, we can feel into abundance much easier, and sufficiency much easier, and enoughness and wholeness much easier. But that it continues to live even when the things that we want get away, even when we're left with seemingly nothing. There is an abundance, a sufficiency, a wholeness that continues to remain. In yoga, we call that Purnam, P-U-R-N-A-M, just Purnam. And you know, I've used this analogy a ton of times, but I'll use it again because it's really helpful to me, and it's one that really resonates. For the name for full moon in Sanskrit is Purnima. That has that same root, Purnam. And so if you think about the full moon, we think about one night out of 28 nights where it's reflected as full in the sky, right? But like right now, the moon is reflecting to me as like half in the sky. But is it not full? No, it's still full. Like the full moon, the whole moon is still there. It's like, really? It's not really a wedge of cheese and a mouse ate half of it, right? It's really the full moon is still there. It's just its surface reflection that appears partial. And so abundance is the acknowledgement of the fullness of the moon, even when its surface reflection is very partial. Do you know? And that's sufficiency, that's wholeness. And so that analogy to me, like, because our humanity and our circumstances will wax and wane, and we will be reflecting maybe sometimes just barely the hint of a trace, undetectable new moon style, like no light. And then sometimes we might be bright and full, but but it doesn't mean that our life is ever insufficient, or that we are ever insufficient, or that the way things are folding is ever not right. And so, you know, the importance of, you know, reclaiming what abundance means and anchoring in, when we begin again, anchoring in this place of eternal sufficiency and abundance is radically important. And in fact, you know, Tantra, which is what this is all sort of like, the teachings that Ashleigh and I are sharing are really rooted in Tantra. And when you look at Tantra, the word itself, you know, it's broken down in lots of different ways, but but it can mean to weave. And if we think about, and it also can mean tapestry. And so I like the interplay of all of this. If we think about our beginning again, like here in this moment, it's just this acknowledgement that I am a piece and a part of this great tapestry of life and living. I have one thread in this great universal tapestry that I have been given to weave throughout the course of the tapestry. And I am the thread, and I am the weaver, and I am being woven, all of those things, but I have one thread, that's it, just one. But there's this greater tapestry, and that there is an urgency and a perfection to the thread that I am being given to weave into the tapestry, whatever landscape it is that I'm in, whatever circumstance it is that I am in. That's the perfect circumstance for me to weave my thread, because that circumstance is also the other threads coming together, you see? And yet it's very small. It's so small, the thread that I have to weave here. I mean, we acknowledge and sometimes it's so helpful for me when I'm beginning to, again, to stay in a place of ease and humbleness by just going out, if possible, and looking at the night sky and looking at the vastness of stars, or going and staring out across the ocean, and just, or standing at the top of a mountain, or even just in my backyard and going, wow, it's so much bigger than me. It's so much bigger than this. And I can take my rightful place in all of this. And it takes a lot of the pressure off as well. So what I want to do, though, is I want to open this up to you guys too. So often what can happen when we're being called to begin again, and especially as we're being called to begin again as a collective, is that a sense of lack or not enoughness, a sense of scarcity takes hold and starts to drive the way forward. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys are sitting in a place of like, oh, right, like the old paradigm has fallen. And last week, you know, Jamie so beautifully spoke to how the people that we were and the person she was, the person that I am, we're not the same anymore, and how we had to grieve the people who we were and who we thought we would be. And so, and we're in this place of being able to begin again. But what can happen when we're kind of left in this open mystery is that we start to feel some kind of like not enough. I'm not doing enough, or there's not going to be enough. There's not going to be enough time or resource or money or whatever, and we start to really scramble from a place of scarcity. Does that happen to any of you guys? Like just like scrambling from a place of scarcity? Yeah, it's really, really, really human, and that's okay. And from a place of enduring peace, we can acknowledge that pull and say, I see you, I understand where you're coming from, and have a little bit of compassion and hold that want to scramble from fear and from scarcity. But what I want to open up to you guys, because, you know, I've done a lot of reflecting on this through this, well, since I've, you know, started practicing Tantra, but even just through this last, you know, 6-8 months or however long we've been in this paradigm shift, that there's a real risk to anchoring in scarcity, and a risk that that leads to sort of like fearful and oppressive behavior. And I just really want to open it up to hear your wisdom on right now. Like let's like assess what is the risk. I mean, like, so we can see that that's a human tendency, but we don't have to necessarily act on it. There's another way that's going to be more aligned and more powerful in the end. But I want to open it up to you guys to just, so we can have this conversation of what is the risk that we face when we align with scarcity, when we align with lack. What happens? What happens personally or even collectively? If we align with there's not enough, you can raise your hand, or yeah, Jen.
Well, one thing, well, I feel like we tend to we go outside ourselves to fix the discomfort we're experiencing. Feels like a risk. Like I notice when I step into fuller places within myself that I'm able to see how I've been trying to fix the problem outside myself through other people. And it just creates inauthentic relating. I feel like that lacks true vulnerability.
Yeah, so there's the risk, right? We're risking our authenticity and our vulnerability to like really fully be human. You know, if we're trying to go outside of ourselves to, you know, to find validation or what have you. And, you know, it's super interesting because when we are disingenuous, or we're not able to live in a space of authenticity, which is a really vulnerable space, like you're speaking to, Jen, we are also unable. We're in some respects we're unable to what do I want to say, accept and celebrate who we are, which then makes us much less available to accept and celebrate who somebody else is as well. When we are in a place of deep-seated authenticity and wholeness, I can celebrate you and what it is that you bring to the table, or what you're not bringing to the table in a moment. I can celebrate whatever it is that you're going through, and at least understand and accept it. Do you know what I mean? Or try with curiosity to embrace it. But when I am not in an authentic place within myself, I am not available to understand, not only not celebrate, but understand you, or even have the want to understand you. And so that is a personal, and as humans, we have a vital need to connect. And that's the other thing. It's not even just a need to connect, but we have a need to acknowledge that connection is our truth. That, you know, back to that old South African saying of Ubuntu, I am because you are, and you are because I'm. It doesn't make any sense, me without you. And to really, you know, acknowledge that truth, but being able to show up as our authentic self, and like our authentic, just bringing it back to the weaving analogy, to show up and be like, this is me and my thread. I can celebrate that this is you and your thread, and that we are meant to weave together, that we are sort of like one. Does that make sense? But I feel like what you spoke to there was really, really important about what we risk, that sense, the acknowledgement of the truth of our connection, and the sense of connection that we get when we acknowledge that, which is vital, primal to us as humans, because we don't survive without it. Yeah, that's what I want to say to that. And we cannot risk that right now. That is an essential thing that we must have. So anchoring in our wholeness allows us to be authentic, even though we'll be judged, and even though it won't be perfect, because that's not what it's about. Trey, I noticed that your hand is up. I'd love to hear what you have to add here.
Good morning. A little bit late. What's
okay.
out the
world?
Good. Me personally, when I align with scarcity, I tend to look for the wrong things that I actually need in the moment. And a lot of times, all of the things I need are within me or within a conversation but I see in a lot of conversations I've been having with my friends lately, everything goes back to money. Oh, if I just had a little bit of this, so I could. But a lot of times it's just a conversation, or because the idea is what you're trying to manifest anyway. And yeah, I start to look for the wrong things, and then I lose time, and opportunities have gone by the wayside because they were looking for me to do something, and maybe I wasn't confident in myself, or thought I didn't have the means to produce. And then it's like, oh, finally, here I am with, oh, well, we got that done a little while ago. You know what I'm saying? But all of that starts with, oh, I can't get this done for whatever reason, when we have all the tools and all the people around us. We need to get started with anything, I feel like.
Yeah. You're speaking to a couple of things, Trey, that I really want to highlight here that are so amazing. And one of the first ones is that the wisdom that we have, this wisdom within us to, if we can anchor in a space, instead of a space of scarcity, but into a place of wholeness, into a place of sufficiency, like you're saying, like we have everything that we need. I'm going to operate in a space of sufficiency. There is the wisdom of where to go and how to do it and where to pull those resources from, right? We have this deep-seated wisdom in us. It's the same wisdom. I don't know how as people, we can literally look at like the geese who are going to start flying south for the winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, and how we can look at them and just like, and they have that like inner navigation system that can like land them right in the right space and whatever. And we can look at, I was just up at this pond with my, I went running up there, and then I saw these tadpoles in the pond, and then I brought my daughter back up there, and it was like, and like they're a tadpole, and then they're growing legs, and then they, then they're out on the ground and they're hopping, and like they have this intelligence in them that knows like how to do this, and it's freaking mind blowing. And we observe it everywhere in nature, and somehow we exempt ourselves from this wisdom and from this like, it's wisdom, it's intelligence, it's our own inner navigation system. Everything has it. Because you put yourself in your shoes, in your house, in your car, does not mean that you don't have it. Doesn't mean that you always listen to it. It's like, it's so interesting the way that we've taken our navigation system and been like, hey, here's my new navigation system. I can't even get around my town now without my navigation system. You know what I mean? And how we've relied on Google to be our navigation system. Like, and this is just like pointing back to also what Jen says, and like what you're saying, Trey, is like outside of ourselves. How have we offloaded or outsourced our own inner navigation system? And it's just like, we have it. And what are the things that we can do to get back in touch with our own inner navigation system and stop outsourcing that to everyone and everything else? Because the other thing that we do when we outsource that is then we start to blame everyone and everything else when they've steered us in the wrong direction. And it's like, ain't nobody's fucking fault but your own. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like personal responsibility, right? Like, you outsourced that, you know what I mean? You outsourced your happiness to that. You outsource, you know what I mean? Like sometimes I outsource my own like sense of worth and happiness to my daughter, the poor thing. Like that's way too big of a burden for her to have to like carry, so there's that about, the navigation system, Trey, that I really want to highlight. But the other thing that you highlight, which is so important, when we go from a place of scarcity, we all of a sudden collapse into a place of individualism and individual will and individual this, and I have to like, it's all me, my mind, and I have to do it myself. When, kind of like you're saying, like we have all of the resources we need it within and just around us. What we start to open ourselves up to when we anchor in a place of sufficiency and we actually attune our inner navigation system, we start to work in a more collective way. Because when we're operating from a place of scarcity, it's also like we collapse down to this individual structure, and then it also seems more okay to say, I'm going to take more than I need, or I'm going to step on you to get to where I'm going. Because if I'm operating from a place that there's only a limited amount of whatever, I'm going to gather it all up for me. Do you see what I'm saying? This is where, I mean, even all the way back to when we were talking about, and we're still working on getting Maisha to come in, but she's luckily super popular right now. But But this is the root of oppression.
Yes.
Scarcity. This is the root of oppression. This is why it's important for racial equity. This is why it's important for environmental sustainability. This is why it's important for all of these things that are big values for us. Because from a place of scarcity, I can take from the earth. I can take from my brothers and sisters. I can try to compete to be the best on the top. I don't care what everybody else is up to, because I've collapsed down into this individual space. And now I don't experience the world from a place of the truth of, this is back to what Jen was saying, to the truth of connection and collectivity. And I am so hopeful that right now, as we begin again as a collective, that we're going to start to see more collective models of things coming about, where we are working within a collective. You know, parents from the schools now getting together, getting together as a small collective to work together to support each other. This person, single mom, has to work a few jobs. That's okay. There's several more parents over here who are willing to help out, because we're going to be doing that with our kids anyway, to get, do you know what I mean? To set you up to succeed. So there's a way that we can start to operate less versus, oh, this is just my kid and I'm just going to school them the best that I can because, you know, whatever, we've got to get ahead. My kid has to be the best and to succeed. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's those two things, Trey, that I think that are at stake if we anchor in sufficiency. But if we anchor in scarcity, but if we anchor in sufficiency, collective things are possible.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for bringing that in, Trey. Love that.
Thank you all.
Yeah. What else, you guys? What else? Yeah, Jamie.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning, Meg. I mean, I relate a lot with what Trey and Jennifer were saying. And that's more of a question or kind of, because I mean, I feel that too, and I've been feeling that for a while, but at the end of the day, it comes down to trust. I mean, or I don't know if call it more like faith, because it's like when we're in this place that I recognize as a very privileged place to have a clean slate and start from scratch. But even if it's scary, even if you can center yourself and kind of know what the heart is asking, but at the same time, even if you know, it comes down to that part. I mean, you can analyze it with your head, or you can have that feeling, but it comes down to, from that point to action, it comes down to faith. Like, you're asking me to blindly trust something that I don't know where is it going or what's gonna happen, or, you know, like there's no signs of any direction. Like, it comes down to that faith or trust, of blind trust, you know. And it's not only scary, but and you can see it as curiosity, but it's so, yeah, I guess it's sometimes so paralyzing, because it's like I have no sense of certainty on anything. Yeah. You know, yeah. And as a privileged place to be, it's still very paralyzing sometimes, you know. And that's when I tend to, like Trey and Jennifer were saying, like trying to control someone else or trying to sabotage myself by going back to, I don't know, whatever, you know. And you can feel it very constraining or sabotaging, but it still is like, well, the other, at least I know this, even if it's constraining, even if it's paralyzing, or even if you know that that's not the way to go, I mean, I still have some knowledge about it.
You know, what you're speaking to, Jamie, is so important, is that this is not anchoring in trust, in wholeness. You know, and this kind of brings us back to a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Shraddha, faith, trust, anchoring in wholeness. A trust, full moon is there, even though we're just reflecting, you know, a new moon. We don't even know. There has to be this kind of trust in the process. And first of all, this is not always the easiest path. I just want to say that. The easiest path is the way that we've done things in the past, because that's what's familiar. So like, as our brains work and through the brain science, what we're going to end up trying to do, especially in a place of uncertainty, even if it's not the best for us, is go back to a place of familiarity. My sister was in an abusive relationship for years, and she's out of it now, but we've talked about this quite a lot, and there's research on it. Even if it's not the right thing to do in a place of uncertainty or fear, the easiest thing to do will be to go back because it's familiar. So to be able to be in this open space and then cultivate, like you're saying, Jamie, trust, and just trusting that maybe what we're in now, maybe what you're in is uncertainty and you're feeling paralyzed. And that's your process right now. Perhaps we're not, perhaps we're not empty enough right now to, for the next thing. This is what the journey is right now. We want it maybe to be, something else, or more like, oh, right, it feels good to be in, like, oh, the creative space versus the destructive space and the emptiness afterwards, right? But we have to understand that sometimes when we're in a space of dissolution where the layers are peeling off, it's going to be confusing, and it's going to be disorienting, and it's going to be desperately hard and really, really humbling. And yet, if we can cultivate our capacity to trust that too, and to know, to be able to, like we were last week, just being with that process, and to somehow know that this too, like everything else, this phase, this process will pass. And to be able to be in the hardship and yet remained tethered to your fullness, because that's what gets us through. So that whatever it is that we're being asked to hold, an uncertainty, a paralyzation, a sense of depression or whatever, isn't the end of the story either. It is what you're being asked to grow through right now, or go through, or even just barely live through right now. But it's not the end of the story. There's something bigger that holds it all. And so, our capacity for trust in sufficiency, and that's why I like to use the word sufficiency versus abundance, because sometimes to me, it just feels like sufficiency. It just feels like I'm just barely scraping by, but I trust that this is what is meant for me right now. And abundant doesn't feel like it to me. It just feels like sufficient. Okay, right now, just this is enough. And I have what I need to get through this, to get through this uncertain time. I have what I need within me and around me, as friends, as a collective. I find when I'm in a place of feeling lost or insufficient, and this is hard to do, reaching in for sure and anchoring, but reaching out to someone, not to have them fix you, but just to have them hear you, is super important. And to just acknowledge that, right, we're not alone. Because I guarantee, and kind of like what happened last week, Jamie, when you spoke, I guarantee when you reach out to someone, they're going to say, me too. I hear you. Because what we start to acknowledge when we anchor from a place of abundance and wholeness and connectedness, is what we start to understand is that this pain that I'm feeling right now, the pain of losing all that I was and thought that I was, this pain of uncertainty, the pain of being paralyzed, the pain of even the guilt of having the privilege to be paralyzed in a moment like this, like all of that kind of thing, that's not your pain. That is the pain of being human. And that's a part of it. And it's going through these struggles that allow us something, that allow us the capacity for empathy. To say like, yeah, me too, I get that. I hear you and I understand you, and that's part of what it is to be human. And so being able to anchor in sufficiency allows us to trust that this too was meant for us, and we will make it through. We don't know what that maybe looks like, but we will make it through. It too, like everything else, will pass, and that we don't have to do it alone. You were never meant to do it alone. These are all shifting. I mean, such a subtle shift from anchoring in scarcity, which is, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this difficult emotion, and I have been for months now. I'm going to isolate and withdraw. That's scarcity. Versus I am in this place and I'm going to reach out and connect. That's abundance. Does that speak a little bit to what you were saying, Jamie? Yeah. I mean, and how many of us are there or have been exactly where she is right now, the face of all of this? It's like, it's so confusing. It's so disorienting. It's so paralyzing. And so one of my very good friends, she's a Salish elder, and she gave me some advice when I was going through a very, very, very turbulent time in my life. And she said two things at this time. The first thing she said was, Meg, stop trying to push the river. It just doesn't work like that. That's the first advice she gave me. And I was like, oh, right. And that was, again, that's just that advice right there, is the shift from lack to abundance. Stop trying to push the river. And then the second thing she said that a bird in the midst of a storm doesn't leave his nest. Just stay where you are for a while. Just keep, just land in it, and the storm will pass. Feel free to reach out to others or whatever, but we don't have to be going out and doing everything right now. I feel like as a collective, stopping and listening well to our own navigation system and to the intelligence of the world around us, and really getting humble and attuned to all of that before we charge forward is so important. And it can feel paralyzing, especially in a culture that celebrates and values success as productivity. And that, again, is a scarcity model versus a sufficiency model. Yeah? Okay. Oh my gosh, is it 11 already? How does this happen? Okay. So we will absolutely continue. Hopefully you guys got our email with school starting back in, and we've got homeschooling happening and some shifts happening in Ashleigh's world. We are actually moving the Satsang to be once a month, and it's going to be the first Wednesday of every month from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific time. So I'm super hopeful that it continues to work with all of you guys, because you guys have been you've been our anchor in this time, and like our community, our source of connection. I mean, just what I'm saying to Jamie here to reach out, like, it's not like I've perfected all of these things, and so whatever, like part of this whole thing is me reaching out to you guys too. And just like your support and your love and your wisdom and your grace have carried me through as well. So I just want to be really clear on that. And so we're really hopeful that you guys, and maybe it will even free you up to be even more available at those times. We'll continue to record them, but we'll start that next week. So next week's will happen on Wednesday, and it will go from 5 to 6. And then since it's once a month, we're looking at pushing it to be an hour and a half. but we want to make the transition. Just let's keep it in an hour to start, see how that works out for everybody, and see if we need to shift it 4:30 to 6 or 5 to 6:30. Okay, does that still make it doable for people? Yeah, okay. So grateful for that. Oh, good. I'm looking at Sophia and Jamie, and I'm like, you guys are in like a different world than us. And so okay, good. That makes my heart feel really happy. Okay, so as long as you do 4:30 to 6. Okay, yeah, that might feel good for a lot of people. Yeah. Oh, Ben. Yeah. Thank you for that. I just was reading I'm not real good at like navigating so many things at once. I'm like here with you guys, and then I see these comments over here, and I'm just like, ah! Simple. But yeah, I appreciate all these comments that I'm reading. Okay, so this is great. Yeah. Does that begin September 2nd? Yes, it begins September 2nd. So next Wednesday, which I can't believe is already September. Oh, that's interesting. I like that trade. Lately, when I've been feeling superior, stuck in a place and confused, super stuck in a place and confused, not superior, I've been feeling like I have something to learn before I can move forward. So that's an interesting way to be like, what am I not seeing here? What is this moment to teach me? And really mining that gem that we talked about before of like, Om Mani Padme Hum, what's the sacred something inside of this moment? I love that. Yeah. And then Ben was saying the ability to, just really, if you're stuck, anchor in sufficiency, and your ability to have empathy for yourself especially will help you move forward. So that's a really huge piece, to be like, not only empathy towards others, but compassion for yourself of like, oh yeah, this is just human. I think of I just am like, oh, bless your heart, Meg. Like, you know, of course you're feeling this way. Look at what we're all going through, and just have a little bit of compassion for yourself. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so next week though, we'll begin 5 to 6 Pacific time, and I can't wait to see you there. We're just going to continue with this conversation because I feel like it's a really important one. And I love you all. I'm so grateful for all of you. All right. And see you next week. Mwah! Bye.